Few figures in cinematic history have inspired as much love and as much criticism as George Lucas. For years, he was celebrated as the genius behind the original Star Wars trilogy, a cultural phenomenon that reshaped modern cinema.
The Force will be with you, always.
But with the release of the prequels, many fans turned on him, and some even began to question the prior achievements that made him a legend. I never really understood the hate. I mean, the man is a visionary who reshaped modern cinema. It's insane to me to even suggest that he's not a good director, and yet that's something many people say. So even though he probably doesn't need it, I do feel like defending the man today. First off, let's start with the obvious. George Lucas directed Star Wars. Star Wars. Arguably the most influential movie of all time. Just to be clear, you don't make a movie like that by accident or by sheer luck. You see, a film is a complex mechanism with hundreds of moving parts, and it takes a strong director to hold it all together. You can have the best actors, the best crew, the best script, the best of everything, but if you have a quack at the helm, you'll never get a Star Wars. You might make something decent, maybe even something good, but never something that transcends cinema and becomes a cultural touchstone. And yet, some people try to take credit away from Lucas, as if the success of Star Wars was a fluke or that he was just in the right place at the right time. Some of the most common things we hear are that the actors rewrote their own dialogue, that the special effects are what made the film successful, or that the editor saved the movie. Well, first of all, let's be clear. Actors making suggestions or tweaking lines is nothing unusual. It's pretty common on a film set unless the director is somewhat tyrannical. That's also what table reads are for, by the way. They're for writers and directors to hear the dialogue out loud and make adjustments, but also for the actors to get familiar with their characters and, sometimes, making suggestions for potential rewrites. Secondly, you can have the best editor in the world. If what has been filmed isn't good, a miracle isn't gonna happen. As for the special effects, even groundbreaking ones don't make a story good or engaging. You wouldn't say the costumes made a movie successful now, would you? Well, same. And even if all these critics were true, by the way, they would still reflect positively on Lucas, because it would mean that not only did he surround himself with the right people, but also that he listened to their professional opinion. I know some people love to rave about control freak directors who don't listen to anyone, but these directors don't always make the best movies. I'm sorry to tell you that. And let's be real, had the movie bombed, everyone involved would have claimed it wasn't their fault. It's only because the film was a success that you see people trying to take credit for it. Funny how that works, right? Another common criticism of Lucas is that he's not very good at directing actors. I might surprise you here, but I actually agree with that. Many actors have talked about it over the years, and he even admitted so himself.
Faster and more intense, that was his main direction. He just wanted us to speed through it.
George is notorious for saying, after a take, do it again, faster, more intensity. He certainly said to me, it's terrific, Tony, can you do it again faster? But that's it, I didn't get more intensity. I don't think 3PO with more intensity would be bearable, do you?
I think George likes people. I think George is a warm-hearted person. But he's a little impatient with the process of acting, of finding something,
That being said, directing is far more than just directing the actors. It also involves leading the crew, ensuring that every department and individual not only understands their specific responsibilities, but also works cohesively towards a shared vision. In essence, a director functions much like a conductor, harmonizing every element of a production so that each component aligns seamlessly, much like musicians in an orchestra playing in unison. Even the most stellar performances from actors can fall flat if the costumes, sets, or other elements don't meet the same standard. In that regard, Lucas has always been praised by crew members for his decisiveness and his ability to articulate his vision clearly, ensuring that every aspect of a production contributes to the overall goal. One of the countless examples was Lucas cutting old war movies together to show his crew and special effects team what he had in mind for the space battles, a detail that went a long way into making the film the incredible spectacle that it is.
That would be like the first animatic, which you do all in the computer now, of course, and we matched frame to frame and the action on that as close as we could, and it was hugely helpful.
The truth is, without Lucas's talent, we would have never experienced this epic larger-than-life battle in a galaxy far, far away. The producers, actors, and crew were all skeptical of his project, and it's thanks to his vision and tenacity that the film even got made.
Didn't think it was going to be any good. Whereas I didn't. I thought, this is a bit strange. And I can remember this lighting man. He said, what is all this about? He said, I can't, it's a load of rubbish, And we all thought it the same at the time. Thought, yeah, this is a bit strange.
There's a princess with her hair and weird buns on the side and a giant in a monkey suit or something. I mean, it was weird. It was very, very weird.
And then after it was released, the sheer ambition and imagination of it created a ripple effect throughout the film industry and beyond. Who knows how many great filmmakers, artists, and storytellers might have chosen a different career had Star Wars never existed.
Star Wars is really what inspired me to want to make the kind of films that we've pursued.
Turned me around 180 degrees as to what I felt I ought to be doing. And what's interesting is that the next film I made was Alien.
They actually gave me a big sort of kick up the backside to get going as a filmmaker. I got really energized by Star Wars. In fact, I quit my job as a truck driver and said, well, if I'm going to do this, I better get going.
It was the perfect film to inspire a sense of wonder and a sense of enthusiasm about being a filmmaker.
It changed my life totally. I think I saw it from that moment on nearly once a week.
Thanks to Lucas, not only did we get Star Wars itself, but he opened the door for generations of creative minds to dream big. And even if you're not a creative, I bet you remember the first time you saw Star Wars. I certainly do. It was on TV back when I was a tiny little kid. I couldn't even read, so my brother had to read the opening crawl out loud for me. I didn't really understand what it was all about, but then the movie started and it blew my little mind away. So much so that I rewatched it the next day and more times than I can count since then. And it still gives me goosebumps to this day. We're not just talking about another movie here, we're talking about a cultural phenomenon that still defines sci-fi, fantasy and blockbuster cinema decades later. And while Star Wars is the crown jewel in Lucas's career, his previous work shows that he was no one-hit wonder. His first two films, THX 1138 and American Graffiti, are underrated gems that prove Lucas had a natural knack for storytelling, character development, and world-building from the start. THX 1138 is a dystopian sci-fi film that blends cold mechanical imagery with emotional depth, giving us a glimpse into Lucas's ability to create immersive worlds. American Graffiti, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. It's a nostalgic coming-of-age story set in the 1960s that captures the heart of American youth with effortless charm. No special effects, no space battles, just pure character-driven storytelling.
That means nothing to you people? You have no romance, no soul?
And trust me, the directing is solid in both cases. Watch them if you don't believe me. And let's not forget that Lucas isn't just a director. He also co-wrote Indiana Jones, one of the greatest adventure series of all time. If you're a fan of daring escapes, rolling boulders, and ancient treasures, you have Lucas to thank for that, not just Spielberg. And beyond writing and directing, he played a pivotal role in revolutionizing both sound mixing and special effects for his groundbreaking companies, THX and Industrial Light and Magic. He also established an animation division within Lucasfilm, which later became the independent studio we now know as Pixar.
It came from George just feeling somehow the technology ought to make our film-going experience be better. He always conveyed a sense of owing something to his industry. His charter wasn't say, go out and make a product and we're going to form a company to sell this product. It was, let's make something which is good for the filmmaking.
Now, I can't write a piece in praise of George Lucas without addressing the elephant in the theater, the prequels. These movies have had a rough ride with some fans, and Lucas has taken a lot of flack for them. Now, yes, I'll admit, the acting and dialogue in the prequels are sometimes a little coarse and irritating. Lucas may have also leaned too heavily on green screens and special effects at times. These are all valid criticisms. They can be explained quite simply though. When Lucas directed The Phantom Menace, it was his first time directing in over 20 years. The man was probably a little rusty. As for the special effects, Lucas had a very frustrating experience with the original trilogy, given the limited technology at the time. So it's not surprising that he might have gone a little crazy with all the new toys he had at his disposal. But here's the thing, as much as the prequels were criticized, they expanded the lore, added depth to the story, and more importantly, they had soul. In comparison, Disney's Star Wars might have better acting and be hyper-polished visually, but it's also an unimaginative mess filled with woke politics and clearly made by people with neither a vision nor any respect for what came before them.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
By comparing both trilogies, you can clearly see the difference between a real talented artist and a bunch of corporate hacks.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Besides, for all the dirt people throw at Lucas for his dialogue, they forget that he also gave us some of the most memorable lines in cinema history.
May the Force be with you.
Use the Force, Luke.
The Force is strong in this one.
Do or do not. There is no try.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
No. I am your father. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. I am the Senate.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
And that's not even half of them. These are lines that stick with you, lines that transcended cinema and became a part of pop culture. There are countless supposedly great screenwriters who never gave us anything as brilliant as this. It's sad how some people fixate on a few poor lines and forget all the gold that Lucas has given us. Personally, I would rather watch the movies of someone inconsistent but with true moments of brilliance than the movies of someone consistently good but never great. Feel free to disagree with me in the comments, it's good for the algorithm. So is George Lucas perfect? No, of course not. Like any man, there are things he excels at and others, well, not so much. But regardless of his shortcomings, the fact is that he is one of the greatest and most influential storytellers of all time. In the future, people will study his work the way we study Shakespeare today. They'll analyze his worlds, his characters, his themes, and yes, even his dialogue and direction. Because Lucas's work isn't just entertainment, it's art. And not just any art, but one that has shaped our collective imagination. So yes, whether some people like it or not, George Lucas is a good director. He may not be the best director, but thank God one doesn't have to be the best to be good at something. And in any case, he's a visionary who changed the way we tell stories on film forever. And for that, he deserves not just our respect, but also our admiration. What's happening, Heidi? You're not tired anymore? You want to watch Star Wars?